Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Face the Truth. Thank you, WACOM, for being an amazing sponsor. I can't say enough. For me personally, WACOM is hands down the best equipment for the serious and professional digital artist. It's been so damn cool that they've been giving away a Cintiq each week for fans of the podcast. Also, if you're a fan of this podcast and what I've been doing and you want to show support, I have now created some merch on my Threadless account. It's easy. Just go to jasonseiler.threadless.com. If you like coffee, there's coffee mugs. If you like wearing t-shirts from time to time, there's t-shirts, water bottles, stickers, and more. This past week, I painted my fourth cover for the Washington Examiner. It was a fun cover to work on, but as usual, I had some challenges. The challenges this week were mostly because the characters are historical, so there's not really much reference except for old paintings. The other challenge was that these sorts of deadlines are pretty quick, so you have to work very fast. We wanted them sitting in the dark and watching TV, so I knew there was going to be, like that blue lighting on their faces and some strong shadows and so on. So I thought the best way to take this on was to paint everything black and white and then slowly introduce color. So I thought I would just share really quick how I created this piece. Okay, so here's the actual Photoshop file, and I've got all the layers turned off. As you can see, I usually, in a piece like this, I like to create all the characters on one layer. I know some people think that's weird, but I don't like to use layers that much, but I do use them for certain things, which I'll show you, kind of help speed up my process when I'm under a quick deadline. This is how the cover turned out in print, which is really cool. I really like the combination of good graphic design mixed with the artwork. So that's what the final cover printed as. Anyways, so I had to keep this really quick. I only had a couple days, so I decided to do everything in black and white so that way I could really just focus on the values and getting the drawing right. And then I wanted to slowly introduce color because, as you can see, it needed to have this feeling of, watching TV at night and having the glow. And ultimately I know that I could have done so much better on this if I had more time. But it's one of those things where, I want to do it the best I can, make sure that it's, solving the problem that I need to solve, in this instance, telling the story that needs to be told. That, the drawings and the caricatures are good and funny and that sort of a thing. And it was challenging because, like I said, these figures are not, anyone I can really look at today for reference. So I just looked at old paintings and drawings of Shakespeare, and I kind of invented Cleopatra by looking at lots of different women. And then this guy here, I actually referenced Wong Bernadette, I think, or Benedict, or I can't remember his exact name, but I thought that his expression was perfect for this character. So I didn't necessarily do a caricature of him, but you can definitely see that he was a reference for me. And then, of course, with Washington, I just used classic paintings of him and basically caricatured the painting and tried to give it a little bit more character. Okay, so let's just look at the steps here. I'll zoom in real quick too, just so you can kind of see. It's loose in some areas are tighter, but ultimately, I kept it fairly loose. You can still see some of the sketch lines and so on. I had to work really quick, so it was a lot of just, what I did with this one is a little bit different than what I normally do. Is I would paint with my normal paintbrush and I kind of like block in, and then I would take the mixer brush and just kind of, quickly blend certain areas together, it's just a way faster way to work. And like I said before, I would prefer to go in there a little bit more detailed, but sometimes you gotta realize that it's going to be small when it prints and things are going to kind of pull together, so that's kind of what I was counting on. So the first thing is like, I got the TV in there, and so I wanted to make sure that was there, and then the background I did first. These are different layers, just to light up certain areas, shadows and so on. And we actually changed the shadows for the type so that it was more even, rather than the first version I did here. Oh, there's a shadow there, okay. And then what I did was I added underneath, behind the characters, I added this noise layer. So when I zoom in and I click this noise layer, it kind of has like this atmospheric feel to it. Okay. So the next step is, like I said, all the characters are all on one layer. Okay. Next step is I start to like add in shadows on top. You can see that when I turn it off and on. And some more shadows. And so this is the first step of the coloring. Actually, I'm going to turn this layer on too. So this layer is just an additional layer just to kind of get the atmosphere there. And then for color, what I did was selected overlay and did some color work on that. And then the next step is I did a layer of color on top. So trying to go, back and forth between each character and trying to get that color in there. This is just a layer of shadow on the popcorn there. And then I wanted to make sure that there was like that TV glow. So I created another layer set to hard light. And I just did like a blue, and I just painted like with an airbrush, kind of softened up with some blue there. And then I did another layer to get that effect to look even more like that. Again, more blue, but now set to overlay. So when I turn it off and on, you can see. But it still wasn't feeling quite like what I wanted. So this is some hair. I want to turn this layer off and on. So I did another layer on top of that, set to vivid light, and boom, that, so these are all painted layers on top with just blues, but you can see how that really just kind of gives that effect, which I really like. And so that was a very quick way to get that kind of a look and effect that I needed. I'm not sure what that layer is. So this is more light, coming off of the TV, and it's really nice because it. Oops, sorry. That light coming off and on really like adds to the shoe and the foot down here, and just everything kind of just pulls all the atmosphere together. This is of course some additional shadows thrown in there. Some little bit light on the popcorn, which the popcorn is super simple. I didn't have time, so it's very, very, suggested. And then a little bit more blue light on the characters, and then at the very end, I added another layer of noise on top of the characters just to give them a little bit more atmosphere. So you can see that little bit of grain in there. And so that's it. That's what I ended up doing. So hope you enjoyed that. Also, some really cool news. I've worked for Mad Magazine a handful of times in my life, but I've never gotten a cover. And I recently just was asked to do a cover for Mad Magazine. A dream of mine since I was 10 years old. No joke. So I'm super, super excited and stoked, and can't wait to share that with everybody. My guest this week has been a hero of mine for quite some time. I used to copy his work quite a bit back in the day, trying to figure out this whole caricature illustration thing. It was really great talking with him about his work and his technique. He's an instructor and historian, if you will, on the art of illustration, so he had a lot of amazing things to share. Before we get started, I wanted to let everyone know that there was a documentary that came out recently about Chris, which I highly recommend to everyone, called C.F. Payne, an American Illustrator. It spans his entire career from his early interest in artwork as a child to his art school days, as well as the ups and downs of his 40 years of working as a professional illustrator. You can find this documentary at vimeo.com/ondemand/CF Payne. Without any further delay, please welcome Mr. C.F. Payne. Play ball! Cool. All right, we're rolling. All right, Chris, thank you so much for joining me on my podcast. This is a huge honor, man. And in respect and honor for you, I wore a baseball hat.
There you go. Yeah, I was wondering, should I go get mine? But it's too far away.
I know you love baseball. I actually enjoy it as well, but I'm not like a crazy, like I don't know any of the players or anything, but I'm a Chicago guy, and my brother-in-law is obsessed with the Cubs, and so I kind of have to wear this hat if I want to go to his apartment and watch a game. It's kind of the rule. So,
well, it's a nice hat. Cubs are good. Yeah. When I was in Chicago, I was so obsessive. I mean, I watched the Cubs and I watched the White Sox.
Oh, that's
it was back before cable, so that was the game. So I couldn't follow my Reds on TV, but I followed the Cubs. This is back in the day when Jack Brickhouse was calling, And believe it or not, Harry Carey was calling for the White Sox.
Oh, wow.
There was a period of time he was calling for the White Sox along with Jimmy Pearsall.
That's so funny. Harry Carey.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. It's funny. My brother-in-law, he was in Wrigleyville like up till recently, and he could like look down into the stadium.
Wow.
And he just moved downtown into the Loop, and now he can see the White Sox stadium. So it's kind of funny. But he wears his Cubs gear down there. You know, it's weird how everyone's like they're such a rival. They're both Chicago teams. You know.
Oh yeah.
It's just funny. So yeah, this is awesome. I'm a really, I've been a huge fan of you and your work for so many years. And when I was, just when I was probably in my early 20s trying to get started in illustration, the way that I got started was basically learning from you and learning from, different artists out there that were being published. I would, almost in a serial killer like fashion, I would rip out magazine covers and pages, and I would just, like one of yours in particular was Steven Spielberg as Indiana Jones. And I remember that piece just is always next to my desk, and I remember just like going over it and over it and over, like, how did he do that? And just learning about, I was trying to figure out the kind of caricature work that was being published, and how big are they making their heads compared to their bodies? How much are they exaggerating? And so basically, your work was like an education for me. So, like I said, it's a big honor to be able to talk to you. And I know like a lot of caricature illustrators or artists out there are huge fans of what you do as well. And so yeah, and then I ended up getting, it was a big deal when Richard Solomon took me on.
Yeah.
And it was mainly because I'm rep by the same guy that CF Payne is, and James Bennett, and so if I felt like, hey, I'm with the big boys, and it was that was kind of like, it wasn't that I had an agent, it was that I had your agent.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So that was a cool. Yeah, it was awesome.
Well, when I was probably in my 20s, I was doing exactly the same thing. Only I had. And I still have some, a lot of my Mad magazines with Mort Drucker and Jack Davis and that whole crowd.
Yeah.
But I also was, collecting tear sheets of Wilson McLean and Mark English and Bernie Fuchs and all those guys. And as a matter of fact, there was a short time I did live in Chicago, about 2 years after college. I've got a buddy of mine lives up there. He's an illustrator too. But we would collect those things like baseball cards, and we trade them like baseball cards. If you had a duplicate of this Bernie Fuchs, well, you could trade that for this Mark English if he had a duplicate of that, or this Jack Davis or that. So, I mean, I think nowadays for everybody that has imagery so instantaneously on the internet, it's no big deal. You could just keep them in files that way. But I still have in my flat over here in my file cabinets behind where this camera is, I've got my little manila folders with my Mark English, my Jack Davis, my Mort Druckers. I've got over on the bookshelves over there, I've got my Mad magazines with all those guys, and they were my heroes.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, mine too. I mean, that's the thing too. Like when I started getting into caricature, I mean, I kind of got into it because it was just something that I naturally, just how I was just drawing people basically, like I didn't really understand that it was caricature or what it was, that's just how I was drawing people. And that was around the time that I started getting into Mad Magazine as well. And I used to sit at my grandma's kitchen table. She would always buy me Mad magazines every time I came over, and I would sit at the table and just draw everything in the magazine. You should copy it and copy it.
Yeah.
That was another early, like Mort Drucker was one of my favorites, but also Jack Davis, of course, and Norman Mingo. I just loved all that,
And then, I'm of the age where Norman Mingo was like the king of the covers. It wasn't until later on I found out about, Kelly Freas covers in early 60s and the 50s, and seeing all of that work. And of course, then later on, you find out the whole story about Mad Magazine and going back into the creepy and things like that of EC comics. And that's when you start finding out all the other characters that were doing it. But it was just probably like you. I mean, I was looking at those publications, and then when I was in school, I was doing drawings of my teachers.
Yeah.
And my teachers, because instead of paying attention to what they were saying and they were standing relatively still, just talking, I would sit there and draw caricatures of them all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. I got in trouble a few times doing that
in
high school.
I was so smart, I took one of my caricatures and I stuck it in the teacher's suggestion box. And of course, it was kind of based on one of those Basil Wolverton things with the major distortions and like an axe splitting her head open and all that. Anyway, so I got in trouble. I said, "How did you know it was me?" She said, "You're the only one drawing all the time in class, you idiot."
That's awesome. Yeah, actually, when I was a freshman, I think I was a sophomore maybe, but no, I was a freshman. Whatever, it doesn't even matter. But basically, I had this teacher, Mr. Wentz, and he was my history teacher, and he hated that I would draw. He would get so annoyed, but like I would just do doodles on the paper, and one day I did a funny little caricature of him. He used to always say, like if you weren't allowed to wear hats in class or anything like that, and if you wore one, he'd be like, you want to I'm gonna mark an H for hats, or like if you talked when you didn't, he'd say I'm gonna mark a T for talking. And he was just like, no hats and no talking and all this kind of stuff. So I would do little cartoons of him. And one time he grabbed me by my sideburn hair and just pulled me down the hallway to the principal's office. And he showed her the drawing of me. And she was like, "Oh, okay, I'll have a talk with Mr. Seiler." And he was like, "He draws me all the time." He was like totally kind of being a big baby about it. And then the funniest part is when he left, she started laughing so hard, and she asked if she could keep that drawing and show the rest of the teachers. So that was like my first, and then she hired me to draw teachers that were retiring. So I got my first like gig from it, really.
There you go.
So I'm curious about like the one thing that is for me personally, like there's not much mystery in like how do you exaggerate or how do you capture likeness. Like that's everybody's own journey. That's everyone's everyone has their own way of capturing likenesses. You obviously have a very specific style, but what's more interesting to me and is just your technique. And I know you've got like I've seen you post certain things, but I'm really curious about your technique because like first of all, is it something you came up with on your own, or is it something that you were taught or you learned somewhere? Because you've got a very specific look that's just, you see it and you're like, oh, that's Chris Payne, right? And I know you use several different mediums, right? You like color pencils, oils, and would you mind talking a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it really kind of came from, and again, I'm a product of the 70s in the sense that I graduated from high school in 72, college in 76. And if anybody who was in college, at least where I ended up going to school, everybody was doing into the fine art thing. It was, you had graphic design. There really wasn't talk of illustration at my school. And so I took a graphic design class by a teacher. And when it came to doing an illustration, his idea was you put your drawing down, get your drawing fairly well rendered, and then you get rid of the white. You get rid of the white with a middle ground. Mm-hmm. And at that time, it was acrylics. We used acrylics. And I didn't know anything about acrylics. And so I just watched him do that, and I struggled with it. And then he talked to us about dyes. I don't know if you remember Luma dyes. And I was playing around with that. And anyway, I went to the illustrator's workshop, and that was 1976. That was with Bernie Fuchs, Mark English, Alan Kober, Bob Peake, Bob Heindel, and Fred Ottness. My teacher in college was a member of the Dayton Art Directors Club, and we went up there and saw Alan Kober present. And this was November of my senior year. And he gives this presentation, and after he's done, I go to my teacher and I said, Mr. Cox, that's what I want to do. I don't want to spec type. I don't want to design tomato soup cans. I don't want to design annual reports. I don't want to do that. I want to illustrate. And so I went up to Cobra and I said, I don't know how I'm going to afford to go to your workshop, but I'm going. And so I literally sold everything I had. The guitar, my stereo, my records, my coin collection, my comic book collection, my Mad Magazine collection, everything I sold to be able to go to this workshop. And again, that same principle I would see every now and then, like Mark English did a demo, a really quick little demo, had the drawing, and the first thing he did was he got rid of the white. Now, my recollection was he used acrylics. And then he went back over that, and I remember him breaking out the airbrush. It was very quick. It was so quick. It was really hard to register all of that. And Fuchs would lay down these oil washes and then pull out. So I got a job in Akron. I was working there. I was trying to learn about acrylics, because again, we had art teachers who were teaching painting classes who I graduated from college without knowing the difference between a cerulean blue and a Prussian blue, or a cadmium red and an alizarin. They didn't talk to us about that stuff. They didn't tell us what color was transparent, what color was opaque, didn't tell us about the properties, anything about it. So when I bought a box of acrylics, it was just the basic set. And I'm trying to paint with that, and of course it's terrible. And somebody says, you ought to try this red. It's better for mixing fleshes. Oh, okay. So then you start expanding your palette. And so I'm trying to experiment and figure this stuff out. And I'm laying down these acrylic washes. And I did this piece, and I laid down the wash, and before it dried, I was lifting off. And I said, okay, that's really worked. I did a piece. It was really good. I was really happy with it. It got into, as I recall, I think it got into CA. And so I said, I got to do more of it. Well, the problem was that piece that I laid down the acrylic wash was so simple. It was a really simple piece. Now I get an assignment. I've got to lay down the acrylic wash. It's a complicated piece, and I can't lift off the acrylics before they dry. So I can't figure out what am I going to do. So I said, well, what if you lay down an oil wash instead? Yeah. And that's why I laid down the oil wash. And when I first started doing it, I had these little brushes, and sort of like Bernie Fuchs, I was trying to lift off the oils with these little brushes and mineral spirits. And that was going along okay. And then I was showing this technique to somebody, and they said, wow, that's sort of like what Bernie Fuchs says. Mark English does the same thing, but what he does is he lifts the oils off, he lets it dry, and he lifts the oils off with a kneaded eraser. And I went, really? Yeah. That's awesome. So I said, let's do that. So it was just, nobody sat down and said, here's how to do this. Every time you try something different. And then I was doing a piece, and I was at that time mostly laying down kind of a neutralized violet. I was using dioxazine purple and permanent green light, and it would make like a neutral violet. I had to do a baseball piece for the Texas Rangers, and you had to have that beautiful green outfield. Well, paint green on top of violet. You'll be painting all day long because that violet just keeps coming through, and it just makes it, you don't have the brightness of it. So I just couldn't get it. So I thought, well, wait a minute. What if before I lay down the oil wash, if I put down an acrylic wash first, then I lay the purple and I lift off, revealing the green. And it worked. And I said, wow, if that works for green, would it work for flesh tones? So that's when I started laying down an acrylic wash over the drawing, a thin wash of acrylics, and lifting off, and that would then help create some of the beginnings of form. And then I thought to myself, well, wait a minute. If I lay down acrylics and it's dry, that's permanent. And if I lay down now a wash of watercolor on top of the flesh tone, so let's say I lay down a 30% wash of acrylics, let it dry. And again, the drawing's a substantial drawing. So when I lay down the acrylics, I'm not blowing my drawing away.
Yeah.
So I put down like a 30% value. If I take then a 50% value or a little bit more value in watercolor and wash that down and let that dry, I can then take a brush and with a little water and lift off, again, beginning to get form. So now I have my form started. I lay down the violet wash and I lift off. Now I've got more form. Then I seal that with a spray fix, and then I can go back in with all my other stuff. The little snafu that's happened over the years now is the spray fix that I used to use is no longer available.
Oh, of course.
It was, well, the spray fix was actually designed for photo retouchers.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Back in the day when you would actually do photo retouching on an actual photograph. And you had to seal that emulsion on the photograph. Well, nowadays, everybody does their photo retouching digitally, so there was no longer need for it. So that particular brand of spray fix, it was a spray fix that had a tooth to it. And you literally, because you know how it is, if you spray fix on stuff and try to paint with washes, it beads up oftentimes. So you have to somehow bring that back. So most recently, what I've been doing is I lay down, I do everything I do, I spray fix it, and then what I have to do is I have to mix with some ultra matte medium, kind of a wash, and wash over it with that. You get a little clouding from time to time, but at least you get your tooth back and you can work back into it. It's just the way the business and the way art supplies are. You've been around it long enough. Illustration boards change and they don't accept paint the way they did. You know, the colored pencils are not as good as they used to be. The spray fixes, that changes. And so you're constantly having to kind of reinvent yourself.
Yeah. And is that what you're using? You're painting on like an illustration board?
Most of when I'm doing the finished painted ones is usually on either the Bainbridge 80 or the Strathmore 500 series.
Oh, okay. And after you do your washes and you're building up the form, are you finishing on top with color pencil for that extra texture?
And paint. Pencil and paint. You never just. Okay. The pencil just kind of cleans up and tightens up the form a little bit, but you got to go back and paint a lot more. You're going back in with acrylics, and the thing is, you can go back and forth. You can put some colored pencil paint on it, and go back with some more colored pencil paint. There is a kind of point of no return where it gets too thick, but you find a way that works, and you're not over layering too much. It's usually 2 or 3, but you are going back in with washes to push back the darks even darker, to rosy up cheeks even rosier. I used to back in the day blow a little airbrush on it, but I just hate airbrush. I hate cutting friscuits. I hate dealing with that stuff. So I stopped dealing. I stopped with it. I just stopped.
It's really interesting just because, I mean, for me personally, the look of your work has such an awesome look to it, but it's so foreign to me from how I work because, well, I mean, most of my editorial stuff I do now, I paint digitally, which is a whole different, ball game. But like I work a lot traditionally, but it's mostly for private commissions and stuff like that. And when I work traditionally, I just use a medium, I'll just like do the whole thing in oils. And so that technique is so interesting to me. It's cool because it's that look. You can't get a product.
It was a product of deadlines. It was a product of deadlines.
That's the other thing I was going to ask is like, I just finished a cover yesterday, and I'm working digitally, and it's still insane the amount. Like I only had a couple days, and I had to illustrate 4 people, and in the scene, and it's not too complicated, but it's basically historical figures: Shakespeare, Cleopatra, Washington, and I think Genghis Khan, or I can't remember what his name is right now. But you have to kind of make it up because there's no reference of these people,
Right.
And then they're all watching TV, and you have to have the dark, and you have to have the glow from the TV hitting their face and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
So, but even digitally, I only have a couple days to do it, and you kill yourself to get it done on time. And I can't imagine doing what you do. like that. I always think about that, because it's like, man, that's just nuts. Because when I first started getting into your work, and it was my dream to become an illustrator, and it was everything I wanted to do. I wanted to do what you were doing. I never once at that early stage of my life considered the fact that, yeah, they only have a few days to do that. You know what I mean? I never thought about that part.
And to some degree, that's why you're not seeing my work out there as much, because I've kind of focused more on some other stuff. Because when I was 35, staying up, and the other thing too, remember, this stuff was being delivered traditionally. In other words, it was being sent out by FedEx. It wasn't being electronically sent.
Yeah.
So you still had to. I mean, I remember losing a time cover once because it was circling LaGuardia in a snowstorm, and they pitched it back, and Tim O'Brien got the cover.
Oh, man.
And so that's what happens. I mean, the tightest, craziest deadline was they called me on a Friday. I was up in Syracuse teaching with the program that I'm directing now. And they called me on a Friday, and the art had to be in New York on Saturday.
That's totally crazy.
And so I'm painting till like 4 o'clock in the morning. The courier is coming at like 4:30, 5 o'clock to pick it up. You hand it off to him. You go upstairs, you go to bed, get the wake-up call, and then you drive home to Cincinnati. And then it shows up on the newsstand on Tuesday. But it was insane. And when you're 35, it's something you can handle. But this month I'll be 65, and I'm lucky enough that I don't want to do those deadlines. It's just. I remember the last all-nighter I did. I swear, it took me 2 days to recover. I can just remember, getting those radiating pains in your chest, and you're going, at 4 o'clock in the morning, and you're going, am I going to keel over here? What's going on with this? This isn't worth this. And so, I've turned down job, and not only that, I don't know whether you've noticed at times, when I used to do many of those jobs, an art director would call me, we would discuss ideas. It would be back and forth. We'd have a conversation. I do layouts, send them, we discuss it again. Nowadays, at least the last couple times I would get a job, it would be from an art director, and he would say, or she would say, yeah, the editor wants you to do this and this and this. And I'd say, well, what if we did this? They go, I don't know. I'd have to show it to the editor first. Send me a layout. Let me show it to the editor. So you do a layout. You give it to the art director. They show it to the editor. He or she would say, no, they want it this way here. Do it this way here. And I'd, okay. So then you'd work on it, and you'd send them the piece. And then they'd say, well, the editor wants you to make these changes to this thing. And I'm at a certain point, I'm going, excuse me, you're the art director here.
Yeah.
What is your job? Are you with the errand boy here, or are you the art director here? All I'm hearing is what the editor is saying. Defend me. Please defend me. I'm staying up all night. I'm killing myself for you. My favorite piece once, I had an art, and I won't say the art director's name, wanted me to simulate a Norman Rockwell piece, which is what I get a lot of. And I send it to him, and his response is, I don't know, I'm not seeing Rockwell in this piece. And I'm going, what are you talking about? I got this person. I even have this person looking back at the camera just the way you have it. Look at this. And his response was, I swear to you, he says, I remember the painting being taller.
Jesus.
And I'm about ready to go outside and step in front of a truck at this point,
Yeah.
But anyway, and I say, when is this due? And I said, it's due tomorrow. And he says, oh yeah, you're right. Well, go ahead. And so I do it, and about 9:30, I get a call from him saying, you know what? I looked the artwork up, and you were right. So, I mean, it's just, and so I just found that the stuff I'm doing work for, the people I'm doing my work for, the deadlines aren't killing me. They seem to have an appreciation for what I'm doing. The other thing too is you've been so good at what you're doing, and you're building a real history with the work you're doing, and it's great, and you're blowing people away. But there's going to be a point in time, and I know it's come to my place, where I don't want my past to constantly define my future.
Yeah, I understand that.
To be, which is why if you see this stuff I'm posting on Instagram, I mean, it's different. It's different because I'm trying different things, and I'm trying different looks. I'm trying to take those things into the new work that I'm doing, and with some luck, the new things I'm doing, fortunately so far, are keeping me busy enough that I don't have to worry about somebody saying, remember that piece you did in 1992?
Yeah.
I don't want to have 1992 or 2002 dictate my life.
Yeah, I mean, everything you just said makes so much sense. I mean, I experience the same thing all the time, where most of the time I have the same exact question. What's the point of an art director? Because most of them seem to be just like they tell you what the editor wants. And I learned the hard way a few times where I was working on a project, working so hard. At one particular art director just loved what I was doing. This is so great. Approved my sketch, everything, and then later comes back and says, after I've worked for hours and hours and hours, and I just showed the editor, and they don't like this idea. They don't like any of it. Well, this is what the editor wants. And I'm like, you never showed this to the editor before you gave me the okay to go. So I started making it a habit every single time I work with an art director that I've never worked with before. Does the editor like this? Does the editor approve of this? Because I've learned, that the art director sometimes is just the middle person. Philip Chalk from the Weekly Standard, he's one of the best art directors. I love working with him because the Weekly Standard doesn't exist anymore, but he's art directing for the Washington Examiner now. But he's a great art director because he communicates with everybody, but also he knows how to compose ideas, and he'll actually direct you a little bit.
Yeah.
And you can go back and forth, and so that's really rare. But yeah, it gets frustrating though when it's rare for me to work on a project where, basically when I get approached for a project, it's usually they have the whole thing, the whole idea, and they just want you to do their idea exactly, Yeah. And it can be frustrating, because I would maybe want to do it differently, Yeah.
I've got my buddy has his website. It's referred to as Monkey with Crayon, because that's kind of how they kind of treat you. But I can remember the piece I told you that I did that was Saturday. That was done for Arthur Hochstein at time. Arthur was a brilliant art director, great art director, but he also had faith in me and the artists that he worked with. So when he called me on this baseball strike piece, his first inclination was, he said, I want to do this picture of a batter and a catcher and the umpire, and I want the big word strike going across that scene. And I, being a baseball guy, because it was about the baseball strike, and I said, Arthur, you got the idea wrong. And he said, what do you mean? I said, if they're on strike, the players aren't there. The umpire's just calling strike, but the players aren't there. They're gone. And he said, draw that up and let me see it. So I sketched it up for him, and I literally sketched it on the back of one of those little post-it things that you get that says you got a phone net.
So yeah, we got cut off there. But you were talking about the cover and how you're explaining the strike and the whole thing.
Yeah, it was basically, and the point being was, it was a conversation between an art director and an artist coming up with solving the problem. And then Arthur was a good enough art director, and he had enough moxie in his own abilities, and he could defend his work. I know that the editor that he worked with could at times be difficult, Walter Isaacson, but I know Arthur defended me, and the Society of Illustrators gives an art director award called the Dick Gangle Award. And Dick Gangle was the art director at Sports Illustrated. And Dick Gangle guarded the look of that magazine. That was his job. And he was not going to let an editor take his job away from him any more than an editor would want the art director to say, no, that's the wrong title. No, that's the wrong direction, that we should take this article. No, this is the wrong take. That's that person's job. But for whatever reason, somehow or another, editors now have the power where they now are the visual content, deciders. And I don't think it's necessarily for the better. It's the reality of what it is. And unfortunately, you guys get to deal with it more than I have to. I get to do the things I'm doing. And so.
Yeah, it's I want to get to that in a second too, because I'm very curious about that stuff. But yeah, it's really interesting. The last few years before the New York Observer basically stopped printing anything, I had been doing several covers for them, and it was just really strange because it was brought to my attention like only a couple years ago. I had no idea that it was Kushner that was like actually the editor or like approving the covers and everything, Jared Kushner. It was really interesting because, I mean, it's kind of an ironic thing in itself, because I realized I actually was pitching some ideas, because every once in a while, like, I'll work on a funny idea and I'll pitch it to a publication. Like, I think something like this would be fun. I don't know if you guys are interested or not, whatever. It's just one way to hustle as an artist. You got to like show people that you're still around and everything.
Yeah.
And I remember like sending like hilarious sketches of Donald Trump to the Observer, and like, I think this would be a really funny cover idea, not knowing that Jared Kushner was actually the one that approving everything. And I remember getting a letter from the art director saying, nobody here likes this idea. I was like, oh, okay. But then it was a few years later that I realized, oh, I get it. I get why they didn't like those drawings. It's just so funny. I had no idea. But yeah. Anyways, this new work that you're doing, what is it that you've been working on? Is it more like illustration, like children books type stuff, or is it?
Yeah, it's mostly I'm doing children's books, and then I do like I've got two that I just completed. I'm working on a proposal with a friend for an idea, and then I'm just doing my own personal work that you see that I post on Instagram. That's a little bit technique-wise, a little bit different, but it was kind of born out of the work I did in the Tom Sawyer book I did for Creative Editions. That process was really kind of born out of the fact that the publisher had contacted me to do a version of it probably 25 years ago, and we could not agree on how to do it. And so we just kind of let it go. And then, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, he asked me to do a baseball book. He knew my soft spot. So I did a collection of illustrations for a book based on a collection of poems by Ogden Nash titled The Lineup for Yesterday. And so he then brought up the Tom Sawyer again, and I said, well, I know what you want. I know what you kind of want as far as numbers. Let me see if I can think this thing through and come up with something you agree upon. And so rereading Tom Sawyer a couple more times, I came to the conclusion that the writing is almost like a journal, because there's no flash forwards, no flashbacks. Some chapters are very short, some are a little bit longer, and it takes place only over the course of a summer of a little boy. So I thought, what if I illustrate it like a journal, like a sketchbook? And I don't know how you do in your sketchbooks, but when I go, I mean, whatever's handy. If it's a ballpoint pen, I draw with a ballpoint pen. If it's a micron, I draw with a micron. If it's colored pencils, I draw with colored pencils. If I got a little paint I can splatter on top of it, I'll throw some paint on it. But what you find when you do that, the thread that connects all of those things is the way you draw.
Yeah.
And I'm always telling my students, you want to try to find that 6 degrees of separation between you and somebody else. you develop your drawing to the best you can be, and and draw the way you want to draw. But no matter what way you want to draw, it still has to be good.
Yeah.
And by that, and how do you define what a good drawing is? Because I see drawings that are anything but photographically real or anything along those lines that I think are great drawers. Alan Covert was a great drawer. There's some people who would probably argue that with me, but I think he was a brilliant drawer. And why? Because the drawings he put down, you can see and you know that's exactly what he wanted them to be. There are no happy accidents.
Yeah.
In other words, it is intended to look that way. That's the way Alan saw the world. And what's so special about his drawings are, I mean, Alan's been dead now for 15, maybe more years. And his drawings look as fresh today as they were when he did them.
Yeah.
Because they are that personal and that good. So to me, if you get your drawings as good as you can make them, and the way you draw is the most personal thing you can do. And then from that point forward, start applying the paint however you want to do it. That gets into other areas. But to me, that's the most important thing, is how you draw.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. It's I mean, like, even when I was first getting started, it's really funny. I was terrified to paint. Like, I was scared of it. Like, it didn't make any sense to me. There was a lot I didn't understand about values and just how, I would look at your work and Roberto Prada and Daniel Adele, James Bennett, Tom Fluharty. So I was like, you guys were like what I was looking at, and I didn't get it. I'm like, I don't know how to do this. And so, but I was just focusing so hard on my drawing. I was just draw. And I knew that was my strength. I knew that was, I know I can draw anything. And I felt like I had a power, you know what I mean? Like, I can just draw whatever, but I can't paint. And I remember I specifically had a thought in my mind, and it's like, I know that I can draw as good as these guys, but I can't paint. And so what changed my career was like looking at your work and Roberto Prada and stuff and thinking, if I can teach myself how to paint like those guys, I think I can make it. It was like, and that was like the confidence that I needed, was like, okay, and then I forced myself, I have to learn how, I was just talking with my last guest, Nicholas Uribe. He's an amazing oil painter. And I was talking to him about Ishmael Roldan and about how him and I became really good friends. And I learned a lot of my early caricature illustration stuff from looking at his work. And it was such an odd thing, because for years I'm looking at his small little, things that were published, and they look so detailed and so tight. And I taught myself how to paint in acrylics to look like that. And then eventually he, as a gift, he sent me a couple of his originals. And when I saw them in person, I realized, oh my gosh, they're so loose and actually really simple.
Right.
And so I was teaching myself how to paint like really tight based off of how it looked in print. But his originals were actually so much more simple than what I was doing. And
you look at Andrew Wyeth has the same thing. Andrew Wyeth, you look at his paintings, it looks like he's and you realize, no, that's just a drag of a brush and letting the texture carry it through. I can remember a lot of times it's when you're trying to figure things out, trying to figure it out from print can be a disaster.
Yeah.
Because print doesn't show you the layers. When you go to the museum,
mm-hmm.
and you walk up to a painting, whether it's by Innes or Bloom or you name the artist, and you wait a minute. So this color was put on top of that color, not the other way around.
Yeah.
And you start understanding the layering processes of, wait a minute, this color goes first, this goes next. I can one time remember, and one of the more recent things I've done a while ago was, before I put down my oil wash, sometimes I'll texture my illustration board, particularly for like dirt and brick and things like that. Because one day I go to the Rockwell Museum, and there's the famous painting of his, of the what is it, the critic, I think is what it's called. It's the young guy in a museum, and he's got a magnifying glass, and he's looking at the brooch of the woman with the Dutch masters looking at him. And I walk up to the piece to look at it carefully, and because the texture of the wall in that painting is just so amazing. And then I looked at it, I realized he textured his canvas.
Yeah.
He textured his canvas, put some washes over it, let the texture do the work for him. And I'm going,
that's awesome.
That's how. Even if you get a chance, go. Have you been to Rockwell Museum?
No, I want to.
Do it.
Yeah.
Got to do it. I mean, the paint on the easel, or not on his palette, is actually he just took paint and squeezed it out, and just like you would on your. And so there is paint sticking out off that canvas, probably 3/8 of an inch, because it's just like he just went and put the paint on there right out of the tube. And that's what it is. Instead of painting it to look like it, he just put it there.
I saw not that long ago. I went to the Milwaukee Art Museum, which I don't know if you've been there before, but it's a really nice art museum. It's really small, so you can see it pretty quickly. But there's a lot of great work there. A lot of awesome German artists that I never even heard of before. But just like there's these artists that almost look Rockwell like, but they were like over 200 something years or more ago.
Wow!
And they're just amazing, like a bunch of drunk friars sitting with like, you know, in like a wine cellar, and it's very like humorous, but just amazing. But I was walking around and I came around this corner and they had like 2 or 3 Rockwells there, and I had never seen a Rockwell in person except for the one that they have got at the Society of Illustrators. But I was able to get right up and look at it, and it was amazing how much I learned from looking at that painting, because you could clearly see exactly how he did it. You know, like you step back from a distance and you're looking at this painting, and it's so tight, and it's, you know, you can see how it looked in print. But when you walk up, you can actually just see the brush works. It's like 5 brush strokes there. It really made me appreciate him even more, because he's one of my favorite artists in the world. When I was in art school, I only went to art school for a couple of years, but one of the assignments we had to do is we had to, in my watercolor class, we had to pick a master, master artist, and we had to pick a master that worked in oils, and they wanted us to try to in watercolor with transparent layers paint, you know, a master's painting, copy it, and make it look as close as possible to that piece. And one of my favorite paintings by Rockwell is the police officer with the boy in the cafe. Yeah. And so what I did was I started working on that, and my teacher says, "That's Rockwell's not a master. You gotta pick like a master, you know, like Rembrandt." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? How can you define who is a master and who's not? I mean, there's a lot of past artists that I think suck that are considered masters, and Rockwell is one of the best there ever. I mean, we're here studying illustration, and you're saying that one of my illustrating icons is not a master?" And so basically he was like, "You know what? Okay, I see what I get it." And he was like, "Okay, if you're going to choose him, it better look like a Rockwell." I'm like, "Well, that's the whole point of the assignment, right?"
Yeah.
So I'm going to make it look like a Rockwell, and I made it look exactly like a Rockwell. I mean, it was a really fun challenge. But again, even when I was doing that assignment, I just felt like I was learning so much from Rockwell, you know, like just how he composed, how he built up everything. And that's a really a great, you know, way to learn. You know, I wish I had more time to do that kind of a thing. I see artists online a lot, like trying to, you know, paint Rembrandts and different things, and it's amazing. I don't have time really for that kind of stuff right now, but yeah, it's awesome. That's the one thing I missed about school.
Imitating is truly, and again, you'll have people tell you that you're not supposed to copy. Well, no, you're not supposed to copy and then pitch it off as your own. Yeah. You can copy as a vehicle to learn. If you're copying to learn, that's the whole point.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
That's what baseball players do. You know, they sit there and they're looking at Ted Williams. If you want to learn how to hit, you watch Ted Williams, and you know that's what you do. I mean, I
copied. I remember one of your Mad covers I did. I think it was you did. I think it was Scottie Pippen and Howard Stern, right? Getting married or something.
Yeah.
I drew that thing exactly like I copied it. Like that's when I was like when I was like learning how to do stuff. I remember just like taking that magazine cover and just drawing it. You know, there's nothing wrong with it. I used to do that all the time. Comic books, you know, I'd get a Batman comic and just copy everything. That's how I learned to draw. You know, but yeah, it is funny that the difference is. Like now, you know, this has happened to me before, like many times, where it's brought to my attention by a fan or a friend of mine. Like, hey, dude, isn't this your Donald Trump or isn't this your this? And I look, I'm like, that's totally mine. And there's people online now that just not even draw a copy. They'll just take your artwork put it on their website and take the signature off and put their signature, or they'll add, you know, different things to it, but it's like I mean, has that happened to you before? I mean, this is
I don't think I've seen it. I don't think I've seen it on a website, but I mean, from time to time, it's showed up.
Yeah, I'm sure it's happened
someplace. I mean, and it's funny because of the world is so small now. I remember the former head of my school was down vacationing in Uruguay, and my art was on the menu at the restaurant being used.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. But that stuff happens, and
it's crazy.
I can remember back in the day somebody saying, you know, this guy's imitating you, and I'd say that's okay. That's okay. I mean, think of all the people that were imitating Brad Holland or Mark English. I mean, those two guys probably produced. And then you go back to, we were mentioning Jack Davis and Mort Drucker. I can remember the first time I got to talk with Mort Drucker, I felt like I was meeting Santa Claus. I was so scared. And I was just trying to tell him, both him and Jack Davis, how important they were in my life. Because before I knew about museums, before I knew about this stuff, they were my inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
And before I ever thought about the notion of being an illustrator, they were the people that just charged me and made me want to continue on. And guys like Mark and Brad, they're the same thing. And you can go down the line saying, oh yeah, that guy, you can see they're knocking off. You know, you can see things in my work that you could say, oh, obviously there he was looking at Wilson McLean. Or there he was looking at Mark English, or there he was looking at so-and-so. And I have no problems with it because I'm learning from them. They're all vehicles for me to try to be better at what I can do. If I lose my personality and my drawing and my ideas, because that to me, I remember Mark English one time saying, you didn't worry about people copying his techniques. The thing that they can't take from him are his mind.
Yeah.
It's his mind that's the thing. That's the thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that makes perfect sense. I mean, I've had a lot of people do that with like write me and say, hey man, I think this guy's, you know, trying to rip off your style. And it's just like, he can try. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. No one's gonna be like, hey, is that Jason Seiler? No one's gonna, you know, be that confused. You know, it's like, but it is funny. A lot of people get concerned with that. But yeah, I mean, I like I said, I mean, it's just funny because when I was getting started, it's like I copied as many people as possible. You know, like I would like how certain artists would draw hands, and I was insecure about how my hands look, so I want to, you know, copy that, how that guy draws hands, and try to figure it out. You know, I remember with Roberto Prada, I just loved, like, you know, the covers that he was doing for Mad. I loved that smooth technique. It just like there was so realistic but still painterly. And I remember there's one I think he did with it's like Alfred E. Newman is squatting and there's like a sidewalk and he's got like I think a Taco Bell bag and there's a little Chihuahua or something.
Yeah.
And just the lighting and everything. I mean, I would stare at that for hours. You know. And I think it's important. I think to think that, you know, as an artist that you have to, you know, make things up, or you know, you're not going to just become an original artist out of nowhere. You know, you have, you know, I remember I even had this weird thought early on that a real artist
makes things up out of their head. You know, they don't use reference or anything like that. I don't know what I was thinking. And then something clicked, and I'm like, I'm going to start taking photos so I can help with my poses and my, to get the folds right. And, I started working with reference and lighting and creating my own lighting. And all of a sudden, things were working, it's like.
The astonishing thing is, and it's absolutely true, because I talk to students a lot because of my job. And you'd be astonished at how many students are being told by instructors using photography is cheating.
Yeah.
It's pure insanity that these instructors who are supposed to be in charge of teaching young people to be artists are telling them stories like this. I mean, you can find photographs that Jerome used for his paintings. You can find the photo reference. It's real easy nowadays to just type in, say, for example, Frank Brangwyn, who is a great mural painter, and just type in Frank Brangwyn photography, and you'll see his photo reference. Alphonse Mucha, just click it on. Those murals he did, I mean, you can find the reference. It's all there. And the idea that, they were using the camera obscura before photography. They were using grids to transfer things down before they had photography. As long as people have been doing this, they've been trying to find ways to replicate reality as best they can. And this lie that goes on out there, where you're not supposed to use, but we always called it reference. We don't call it copyance. We're not copying it. It's a tool. It's a tool. And if people, but I'm telling you, Jason, you'd be surprised. I get students, and I'll talk, who has told you, I've got a whole slideshow of artists and their reference going all the way back, all the way up contemporary.
No, and it's awesome, and it's inspiring. It's inspiring too, because it shows you. I really, again, back to Rockwell. Rockwell is kind of what made me figure that out. Like years ago, I read his book. I think it's called My Life or something like that. And I was like, oh, he uses reference. He posed models, and it sounds so stupid because it's so simple, but it was one of those things.
He was the first one who was just open about it.
Yeah.
He was the first one who said, this is what I do, and wasn't ashamed of it. You can find Parrish photographs. You can find all these people and their photographs. Yes, Leyendecker did not use photography, except if he was painting a portrait of George Patton. But Leyendecker had his own model. Leyendecker was also being paid so much at a time. That back in Leyendecker's days, he was like a movie star.
Yeah.
He was incredibly wealthy. Those guys were getting paid $5,000 for an illustration back when $5,000 could buy you a house.
Yeah. That's amazing. Wow.
And so he had his significant other was his main model.
Yeah.
And he used other people, and they would pose. But Géricault used models when he painted the Raft of the Medusa. Delacroix modeled for Géricault. They all did it. They all used reference.
Yeah, it's so funny. It is funny that comes up all the time. I have been asked even recently. So do you use reference? And it's just the weirdest thing. So of course I use reference. I don't just make up Shakespeare out of my head.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. So what's this the school that you're starting, or you said something about an academy or something that you're doing?
Well, I certainly didn't start it. I'm the director of the MFA program at Harvard Art School.
Oh, okay.
And it's an MFA program. It's a very unique program. It was started by Murray Tinkelman. And Murray was a longtime educator, Hall of Fame illustrator, great guy. But Murray saw, and this was the real vision, he saw that, because for most of my experience in colleges, you go to college as an illustrator, you get your degree, and you go to work. A lot of times in fine art, you go to school, you're doing your undergraduate, you make a decision, I want to be a printmaker, a painter, a sculptor, and you go to graduate school to really hone that craft.
Yeah.
And then you try to make it in the gallery world, and then maybe you use your degree and you teach while you're doing all this. But for the most part, illustrators work. Well, nowadays, to get teaching, you need to have MFAs, and sometimes students need a little more honing with their work. Well, Murray saw for if a student wanted to get an MFA in illustration, there really wasn't illustration MFAs. There's some of them now, but for the most part, say you're living in Chicago. Okay, do you want to move your family to Hartford, Connecticut to earn your MFA? You're busy, you got family, kids in school. You can't just uproot the family.
Mm-hmm.
So Murray developed a program that's called low residency. So you can earn your MFA in Chicago, but you have a few visits that you have to come to the school to get your in-class study done. And then you go home and you do your assignments.
Mm.
So students will come to Hartford for 2 weeks. We have our classes. We then do our city visits where we just came from the Bay Area where we had a group of speakers and the students have their assignments. And so it's a vehicle that a person can earn their MFA. They can do it while they're at home, and it has relatively little disturbance in their personal and their business world. You have to come to Hartford for 2 weeks in the summer. In July, you go out of town for 1 week in October and out of town 1 week in March. And it's a great program. We've got great instructors, and I taught for 20 years nearly at Columbus College of Art and Design. I taught when I was in Texas at East Texas State University, taught at Miami University for a while. And when Murray and Carol passed away, both of them passed away, they asked me to throw my hat in the ring. And when they offered me the position, I agreed to do it because I think having this option for an artist to earn their MFA, not have, in this kind of format is really important for illustration. And so we're doing, I think, good things. We've got great speakers. We got great instructors. And with some luck, we're following in Murray's footsteps in the vision that he had for the program.
That's amazing. That sounds incredible. Wow. How long have you been doing that for?
This will be my third or fourth. I think this is my third. I know this is my first full graduating class. These students that are graduating are students that I recruited, and so this would be my third summer, I believe. And so it's been a great thing. We like I said, I am actually, wanting to see investigating bringing, one of our city visits to Chicago. Traditionally, we've gone to New York, San Francisco, Pasadena, and Houston. But one spring, I brought them to Columbus, Ohio, because Columbus has the Billy Ireland Cartoon Museum.
Oh,
and
cool.
If you're familiar with cartooning, it's the best museum for cartooning in the world. I mean, they took us down the archives and they were pulling out Winsor McCay Gertie the dinosaur drawings. They were bringing out some of the earliest manga work. They were pulling out, Bill Watterson, Calvin and Hobbes. And then we went up to Findlay, where they have the Mazza Children's Book Museum, where they got Lee Greenway and tons of originals of children's book art. And then you've got great artists in this area. So it's what you really do is you go to those cities and you take advantages of all the artists and museums and studios that you can. When we were out in San Francisco, the Bay Area, we had a studio tour at ILM.
Oh, wow.
And got to go to the Disney Family Museum and had great artists out there speak to us. And
cool.
It was a great week.
Yeah, that's awesome. That sounds incredible. And the classes that are taught there, it's for the, it is interesting. I never heard of an illustration MFA program really. It's just all focused just on illustration.
It's just focused on illustration.
Okay.
One of the things like you might call it a history of illustration class, but we really don't call it that. We call it illustration in context because it's so important people understand that the art is operating in the context in the world in which it was created, because it usually goes to print at that time. It's not, it's not hanging in galleries and things of that nature.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done lectures at other groups where I talk about illustration, and I refer to this one lecture I do, art you'll never see in museums, because you don't see Dean Cornwell hanging in museums. You don't see Saul Tepper hanging in a museum. You don't see Jack Davis hanging in a museum. And yet they're great artists. These are people that they're part of everybody. Everybody knows Jack Davis.
Yeah.
But it's only illustrators like you and me know the name and put the name with Jack Davis. But everybody knows the work. They've seen it. He's part of our culture. And so we that's the way we kind of house it. So it's like an illustration history class, but we talk about it in the context of the day it was created.
That's really interesting.
So we'll have programs that'll be on science fiction art, programs on comic art. We did a whole thing on matte painting, a history of like matte painting for Hollywood. And one of the speakers that we had in Columbus is a guy named Mark Sullivan. And I mean, Mark is one of the best matte painters in the world. I mean, if you saw the movie Hook, the tree that Peter Pan lived in, that is Mark's painting.
Oh, cool.
And
wow.
He does stuff he's an amazing artist. And that's the thing we talk with him about, is the skill sets that you learn as an illustrator can be taken to a variety of disciplines, whether it's greeting cards, whether it's your own business, or whether it's doing caricatures, or whether it's doing graphic novels, or whether it's doing book covers, or, you know what I mean? It's all over the place. It's no longer just the Society of Illustrators only.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. That's really cool. So I've got a bunch of drawings I want to show you, drawings and paintings that people did. But before I show you that, I need to make a little announcement here. So let's see here. So the first person, everyone has to pay attention to this, but the first person to basically subscribe to my YouTube channel and answer this question correctly will win 1 free year subscription to the Adobe Creative Cloud. So you got to listen to the right podcast to get this. So here goes. Which one of my previous guests painted a movie poster with Ice Cube and Tracy Morgan, and what was the movie called? Leave your answer in the comments under this video on YouTube, and email me as well at facethetruthpodcast@gmail.com. I've got a couple questions for you from fans.
Sure.
So maybe before we get in, I'll just ask a couple questions real quick. This is this is from Mark Montgomery. He said, my question is, has a client ever chosen your sketchbook painting as a final, or are those just for fun warm-ups? Sorry, I don't know if I read that correctly. Yeah. And then he said, does he start a new client painting by doing one in the sketchbook and then redrawing it on the final illustration board, or is a sketchbook completely separate?
Yeah, the sketchbook is completely separate. I mean, it is part of my kind of my daily experience, where I really try to do this all the time, because I'm just, you want to get better at it. And so, back in the old days when I would work out sketches and work figures out, I used to do it on tracing paper. And so what I would do is I'd do like a gesture of a face. And if I saw the face in the gesture, I'd slide it under the tracing paper and then formalize it on the next sheet.
Yeah.
Well, after doing that for 25 years, I kind of started figuring, I think I could do this without the tracing paper, and just start sketching in my sketchbooks. And that's what I do. And so I then, if I need to transfer it to a piece of illustration board, I just get a digital shot of it and project the drawing. And then with a 6H pencil, make very loose gesture sketch once again, and then redraw it all over again.
Yeah.
The drawings that you see in the sketchbook that have paint on them, they're just what I call my painted sketches, really. They're just painted sketches.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. So Steph Ayers, I think I said that weird, said, I'd love to ask him how he came to such a varied use of media, and whether this developed over a long time. But I think we already covered that.
Well, yeah, every time you try something a little different, you see something, like I mentioned about the texturing, seeing the Rockwell. But it really was just a matter of, you got a job, it's due sometimes in less than 24 hours. I mean, you can't do a full-blown oil painting. It can't be done. So if you're going to use the oil wash, you got to use it and let it dry fast, which I've never used a hair dryer on my head, but I've used a hair dryer on my art a lot.
Yeah, same here. Jen C. Faraz asks, what's your advice for young artists that wish to start a career as an illustrator or caricature artist?
Well, okay. The first thing you got to do is I have a very dear friend of mine who is a great illustrator by the name of Jack Unruh. And Jack and I would talk on the phone. I knew him when I lived in Texas. And when I was living back up here in Cincinnati, we'd talk. And I remember him one time telling me, this was probably about a year before he passed away. He said a young person came to him and showed him his portfolio and said, how do I get started in the business? And he said, you know, the first thing he looked at in the portfolio, he said, son, first thing you got to do is you got to get good. And right now, you're not very good. And I know that sounds overly simplistic, but, you know, I can remember when I was first starting off as an illustrator, I had just had a little studio job in Akron, Ohio. It was just doing tires. I mean, it wasn't romantic at all. I was drawing tires and pictures of cars and things like that. And on my own, I was experimenting, trying different things, going to drawing class, working on this stuff, trying to get better. And at a certain point, I wanted to see how good did I think I was getting, because when you're working by yourself and you only have your friends, you know, your friends blow smoke up your kilt, you know that. So I went to New York to show some people my work. And I can remember one time showing my work to Wilson McLean. I mean, he and still is a great artist. And I had so much respect for him. And he agreed to see me. And he looked at my work and he said, you know, your work is nice. You got the noses in the right places. You got the right number of fingers. He said, it's nice to see that you're not doing a portfolio with sharp teeth. That was at a time when there was a lot of that going on. But anyway, he said, but the thing is, when I look at your work, I don't know anything about you. Your work says nothing about you. You know, what do you have to say? What do you have to say with your pictures? And man, I went home and I mean, I struggled with that one big time. What the hell do I have to say? You know, I'm only this, you know, I was young at the time. I'm going, you know, I haven't experienced that much. What the hell do I have to say? And so it was just, I started looking a lot more, looking at art a lot harder, looking at my own art a lot harder, and started pushing myself. And then I started to realize, you know, you're a pretty good drawer. You can draw. Have faith in the way you draw and make sure the drawing is good. And then paint from there. And the other important thing you have to do, you have to focus on the job you're doing and making it the best you can. Period. No matter what. Nothing else matters. You make that job good. If I don't know about you, I've never finished a job saying to myself, oh, this will get into the Society of Illustrators. Oh, this will get an award. I don't do it. I mean, I entered Society of Illustrators for years simply because I knew it was good for marketing. Yeah. But I didn't do it for affirmation. I did it for marketing purposes. I mean, I do the job as good as I can make it because I want that person to call me again on the phone because they trust me. 100%. They can trust me. Yeah. And if you focus on, I don't care if it's a freebie for a charitable organization that you believe in, or one that you marginally believe in, or whether it's a $250 spot for a little piece in a magazine, or a $2,000 or $5,000 piece. Every job has your name on it. You make it the best you can be, and that's it. And if it's not, if you don't meet their expectations, I mean, all you can say is, I'm sorry, I'm doing the best I can. I'm doing the best I can. It was the best I could do. Yeah. Because the art you do is dictated by deadlines, restrictions, all this stuff. And I always say, if there's a difference between fine art and illustration is art done under the circumstances.
Yeah. Yep. That's for sure.
I mean?
Oh yeah. No, I mean, that's my line of thinking on that whole thing with the deadlines and the quality for my work, my aesthetic is that it doesn't matter what the client is, who the client is. What matters is, your reputation is on the line. Like every time you do an illustration, it's like, hey, this has to be the best that I can do. And, and I want it to be the best I want it to be better than the last thing I did, you know? And it's hard. It's really hard in illustration because you do have such, there's a lot of restrictions when it comes to an illustration. Like for example, I did a cover for Time magazine recently, and I'm very happy with how it turned out, but it's one of those things, and I'm sure you can relate to this. There's so many things about it that annoy me that I know that could be better. And I guess maybe I put a lot of pressure on myself, but it frustrates me. Like, it's hard to look at it because there are the things that I wish were different. Even though I'm proud that it's on a cover of Time and I'm very grateful for the work, I'm just like, I know I could do better, but I only had a couple days.
Yeah,
so it's like
you see the warts. You see the warts.
Yeah, and that's a huge difference between that was a really great point between fine art and illustration. One of my biggest pet peeves is when I hear people say that illustrators aren't fine artists. It's like, but my skills as a painter and being able to draw, that's fine art. I just happen to be illustrating. I don't have weeks and weeks and weeks to do one painting. But that's part of the fun of it too. I enjoy the challenge.
I saw Milton Glaser give a wonderful lecture where he just said he just wishes people would just categorize art as there's great art, there's good art, there's mediocre art, and there's bad art.
Yep. No, that's true. It's the way it is. I mean, it's the life of an artist I don't really think it matters exactly what kind of artist they are. They're an artist, and it's trying to like get into our head. It's going to be a little bit scary, I think, for some people, but yeah, it's awesome. Anyways, I have a bunch of drawings I do want to show you. A lot of fans were excited to draw you, so I'm going to switch over real quick.
I sense I hope some fun photos.
Yeah. No, I think you're going to enjoy this quite a bit. So do you see it?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
I had no idea my neck was like that, but that's very fun.
So yeah, this first one here is by Ray Shipman, and we'll just kind of go through and check them out.
Where's Ray from?
I have no idea. Some people tell me where they're from, but these are fans of yours, fans of mine, fans of the podcast. So every week I have people send in drawings if they want to.
I look like Max Headroom there.
This one is by Jonathan West.
Wow, that's very nice.
So yeah, it's really cool to be able to see all the different artists they're from all over the world too. So that's really awesome. This is by Jared Hobson. I believe you actually met him when we did that caricature convention together.
Yeah, up outside of Sandusky.
Yeah. I believe he was there. I'm pretty sure you met him.
Cool.
This is a cool one. This is by Asmadi Abdullah.
Wow.
So like I mentioned to you, a lot of people definitely went for the baseball theme.
Yeah.
This one's crazy. This is by Big Al Lopez.
That's great. That was a fun. I'm trying to remember what I shot that reference for. I got over the years. I used to shoot them, and they'd be photos. Take them to the 1 hour lab. And I used to have boxes and boxes and boxes of them. And finally, I said they've been sitting here for like 15 years, haven't been used in ages. So I got rid of most of them, but I saved a hand. So many of them. So that's fun.
Yeah, this one it almost reminds me of this comedian Ron White, I think, or
Oh yeah.
a little bit. I think that's
All
his
I
name.
need is a drink and a cigar in my hand.
Yeah. That's the guy. This one's by Dave Rickard.
Boy, that has a real, like, almost like Ronald Searle feel to it, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
Holy moly!
This one's by Colin Boyer.
I know that name. Yeah, he crushed it.
Yeah, it looks cool. It's got a nice style to it.
I look tired.
It's like, yeah, time to take a nap. This one's by Clinton Coltrane.
The ball off the head.
Yeah.
That's good.
This one's by Greg Eagle.
Oh, wow.
Cool. That's very nice.
Based off that Joe Nuxall piece I did. Cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. This is interesting. This is by Paul Davies. I think it's 2 versions of you.
Yeah.
Doing weird things to yourself. It's pretty awesome. This one's pretty cool. Trying to do your style a little bit. I think Mark Montgomery did this one. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
He's got the right arrow baseball for me. There's no doubt about that.
This one's by Ollie Magnuson.
Ollie, boy, he crushed that.
Yeah, really awesome paint style. I really like it.
Is this traditional or is this digital?
This is digital.
Wow, but it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Beautiful lighting.
Yeah, I really like the value range on the face. It's really nice. This one, pretty funny too. This is by Guy Barbosa. It's pretty funny.
That is very funny.
You could put a cigar and some whiskey in this one too, I think.
No doubt. And yeah, that's
funny. This one's by Dominic Zaulinger.
Very cool.
Very.
I like the simplicity of that. Very nice line quality there.
Yeah. Yep.
Kind of almost Hirschfeld like.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it's really interesting basic shapes there too.
Yeah.
To capture that. This one's by Yazan Khalifi.
There you go.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, he definitely has. Everybody's getting me without my ears because they are pinned to the side of my head.
Yeah, technique-wise, I think this is kind of interesting. I like the different layers of color in there.
Does that look like he's got a red with a green on the background?
Yeah, there's a bunch of colors popping through there. Some violets.
Nice. Very pretty sweet.
That's cool.
Sweet.
This one is by Hanu Navalina.
That's terrific.
Some nice brush technique stuff there.
Yeah. Nice forehead.
This one is by Steph Aries.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I love how everyone's getting the whole baseball thing down.
Yeah.
You got some stalkers, it looks like.
Well, maybe. There we go.
This one's Danny Dufford.
Danny! He's one of my former students.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, Danny's a terrific young man. Very talented.
Yeah, this is a really cool style. There's something about the rendering style that sort of reminds me of Risco a little bit.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. This one is by Lars Eric Robinson, and he actually had a question for you, and it was just basically, what are your thoughts on digital illustration or painting?
Well, I have no problem with it. I really don't. I mean, I've just been lucky enough that I've been busy enough doing what I have to do that I don't have to stop my world and try to learn it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great thing. I mean, to me, what I find that's most effective, I don't necessarily think it's necessarily a better art making tool. It's a making art tool, but I will say this: it is a better eraser. There's no doubt about that. It is a better eraser because
That's
I lay a wash down and it ain't right. I got to work with it. And, you know, that's the reality. But no, if there was one area that I have to say as a teacher that drives me nuts about the computer, it is kind of like you have your whole studio. So if you want to take your whole studio with you and take it into the bathroom and work in the bathroom, you can do that. If you want to take it with you out in the car, if you want to take it to the park, you can do that as long as the battery lasts. The bad side of that freedom is, as a student, when I was in school, we were all working in a room, and we'd be working at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, working on our artwork. And I'd be working on something, and I'd show it to one of my classmates, and I'd say, John, what do you think of this? And he might say, that looks stupid. And of course, because we're classmates, we can talk to each other that way, right?
Yeah.
We're in this together. We can say, well, that looks stupid. And I can say, you know, piss off, or I can defend it. Or I can defend what I'm doing, and we have a debate about it. But then we have that. And you don't have that when you're all by yourself working at home and you're not having your fellow classmates working with you to bounce things off of, to learn from and get that information from. It just leaves it to the teacher. And so now all of a sudden your teacher is critiquing your work, and your teacher can't say to you, well, that looks stupid. They might like to, but they have to be able to couch it in a way that's very soft and nice and everything. Whereas the students can really talk to each other in a very truthful manner. And I think they lose that by relying on the computer and not working with each other in the class. And that's the only downside that I see with a computer.
No, that makes sense. I mean, even for me as an illustrator, I'm going to go to the next one. This is by Juan Gastelum. But even for me as an illustrator, like I often send my work to my art buddies, you know, just like bounce ideas off, or like, hey, what do you think about this? You know, sometimes it's good to have someone else's fresh take, you know.
You have to do that.
Yeah, it's important. I'm lucky too, because I've got a lot of really good friends that are awesome artists. Also, my dad's an artist, so there's times where I'll just send him like, what do you think about the color in this? Like, do you think I should make it pop more? And sometimes he'll sometimes he's like, hey, it looks great to me, I don't know. And sometimes he's like, oh yeah, I see what you're saying. Maybe you should try this. So it's I don't think anybody should be above getting feedback on your work, you know.
Oh, all the time. It's so valuable. And your classmates are so helpful. Wow, that's
this one's by Gino KS. Yeah. Here's Chris.
Yeah. Well, I hope I'm nicer as a teacher than that.
That's awesome. This is a pretty cool piece too. This is by Leighton Scarborough.
Wow. Whew.
Yeah, it's interesting. I like that you can kind of see some of the sketch marks in there. It's nice.
Yeah.
This is a cool sketch. This is by Timothy Dunnigan. But yeah, I think it's in illustration and drawing and painting and everything. It's great to get your feedback from people in the most honest way, you know.
Well, it's interesting. You can see there's some people who really love to push the caricature.
Yeah.
And they really do. And as a caricaturist, doing caricatures of some people is so much easier. I remember years ago seeing a Philip Burke painting of Kurt Vonnegut, and I said, looks like a photograph, because Kurt Vonnegut looks like when he was older, he looked like a Philip Burke illustration. But, trying to do a caricature of, say, I can remember back when Bush 1 was president, doing a caricature of Dan Quayle. That was tough. Because, all the features were pretty normal, pretty average. There wasn't a whole lot there to distort. I mean, doing a caricature of Liz Taylor or Grace Kelly. That's a little tougher.
Yeah, it depends. It depends on the person, I think. Oh, by the way, this is by Ali Sumakia.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, I mean, I've never really. I tend to kind of not agree with that exactly. I mean, for me personally, I think that it really depends on the reference, because I've never had a problem with caricaturing anybody. There's always it's just basically finding the truth in that person. But sometimes reference is so bad that makes it really hard, Well,
when I say tough, it's just I can remember, having to do a Jimmy Stewart, and you'd think that would be easy, it took me a lot more drawings than I thought it was going to have to take me.
Oh, okay.
It took me a lot more drawings, whereas I remember doing Tiger Woods and I nailed it the first drawing.
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that makes sense.
And so some of them, again, some people, it takes a little bit more work. And the other thing that's too is when you have somebody that's really iconic, say like Humphrey Bogart, that's been done 10 times by so many other people. Let's take this one, Jack Nicholson. Everybody wants to do Jack Nicholson's forehead. Well, I did a portrait of Jack Nicholson where I didn't increase his forehead. I focused on his smile, his teeth and his smile, because everybody blows that forehead up.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to stay away from that.
Yeah.
And so that's what I mean by that.
No, that makes perfect sense. That's a really good point too, is it's there's so many people. Like for example, right now there's you've got Steve Brodner and Victor Huaz and a bunch of Tom Fluharty, a bunch of artists out there that are drawing Donald Trump all the time right now, and it can be easy, I think, for people just to be so influenced by how other artists are drawing Donald Trump, and I've seen that. I can see that. Oh, they're totally trying to draw it like this guy, but I take that as a fun challenge. That every single time I get to draw Donald Trump, I'm going to try to take it to some other place. I'm never going to draw him the same way twice. I'm not going to stay in that zone,
Yeah, totally.
This one's by Tony Lewis. I think this person was from England, if I remember correctly. I might be wrong. Yeah, a lot of people were sending them in late yesterday still. So
okay.
This one's by David Francesco. And I feel really bad. This person in particular, I'm not sure where they're from, but I could not open their file over and over and over again. It wouldn't open, and finally I got it to open. So,
wow, very nice.
Yeah, nice style. This one is by Helen Arini. Interesting.
Yeah, you can see she didn't make the forehead. She didn't take advantage of the forehead.
Yeah.
This one here, she's a lot more realistic.
Yeah.
She's aiming for more realism.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. I don't. When I ask people if they want to send drawings, it's not a caricature thing. It's draw whatever you want, Yeah. So I've had people do all kinds of different stuff.
Cool.
This one's a fun one. This is by Michael Crotty. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I like how a couple people have done that. They've kind of it's almost like a split personality or something.
Yeah.
This one is by Andy Ellis. This is pretty cool.
Wow. Too. Everybody's having me hit by the baseball. When are they going to have me hit the baseball? I need to hit. He's got the right team. He's got the right team. There you go.
That's awesome. This one's by Carlos Rubio. Very nice technique.
Yeah.
Could definitely land a helicopter on that forehead.
Tell me about it. Look like a water balloon up there.
Yeah. It's got its own zip code.
Yeah.
That's nice though. I love this one.
Yeah.
This one is by Kiko Yamada. But this is the style is so cool.
It is.
Yeah, really nice.
Definitely got the bags.
Yeah, I just love the graphic nature of this one. It's got a nice punch to it.
This also has some of that Risco feel.
Yeah. Yep. This one's a little crazy. This is by Jency Fraz. Isn't that so accurate though? Art stabbing you through the heart.
Yeah.
That's a good metaphor.
Right through the chest.
Yeah.
Yes. What's that? Oh my gosh! Look at that.
Yeah. This one is by Daniel Elsheimer.
Wow. Very cool.
Yeah. I can't remember exactly what he said, but basically he was trying to do you as a kid. And I think that's Pete Rose and I'm not sure.
And Johnny Bench. Pete Rose and Johnny Bench.
Yeah. It's very cool.
Very fun idea. Very fun idea.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? A lot of work.
A lot of work in that one.
Yeah. I like this one too. This is by Kirsten Woods.
That's good.
And this looks like color pencil, I think.
A lot of gums there. A lot of gums.
This is a good one too. This is by Fernando Mendez.
What's in my hand there? It's a little tiny.
I don't think there's anything in your hand. I think you're kind of like, you come to me in the day my daughter's wedding.
Okay, gotcha. So
I think it's like
maybe a little the highlight on my fingertip.
Yeah, I think it's just like capiche. That's how I saw it, anyways.
It's a sweet art. That's sweet art.
Yeah. Oh, that's the last one actually.
Oh wow, cool. Wow. So now, do these guys with your podcasts and do they go online and pick up some of the techniques that you're teaching?
I don't know. I mean, the whole thing about what I'm doing here with this podcast is I just really want to be able to talk to as many artists as possible, musicians, actors, comedians, anyone that has anything to do with art. If you make wine, it doesn't matter. I just want to inspire as many people as possible, encourage as many people as possible. And just, I just have a love and a passion for art, how it's done. It doesn't matter if it's writing, cooking. And I don't know. I have like this vision and this idea to do this with as many people as possible. So it's really cool. I mean, a lot of people have been writing and very encouraged and excited about it. And so, yeah, I don't know.
Well, the amazing thing is this new technology. If there's one thing, I mean, it may frustrate you on one level, but what I find remarkable about it is now how much more accessible it is making things like this to other people. I mean, there's some people that I'll see on Facebook that are posting art. Today's Inspiration, I think, is one of them, and some other ones, and they're posting artwork of artists. Some of these artists, I'm pretty good, I think, with my art history and my illustration history, but these folks find people that go, whoa, or they'll find somebody whose work I know, but because back in the day the artwork was never credited, so you didn't know who did that artwork, and you're going, oh, that's who did it. Dave Groff is a guy I teach who I taught with for years. He still teaches at CCAD, and Dave has a real eye and has a real understanding and appreciation for art history. And you'll see some of Dave's postings on Facebook, and they're great. He's always introducing you to new artists, and that's the vehicle that I find. I mean, I see this stuff and I go, oh my God, there's another one. I never heard of this person. I need to find more. And that's the lesson I try to pass on to all the students is at 65, I'm still trying to get better. I'm trying to find other sources of inspiration. I have no desire ever to retire. I mean, I'll go out to Kansas City this summer to teach with John and Mark English, and Mark is, I think, 84. And have you seen the stuff Mark's been posting?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, he's
amazing
incredible.
Stuff.
Yeah.
And his drawings, and he draws all the time.
Yeah.
And when we have our figure drawing class, he comes to our figure drawing class and draws with us all the time. I mean, that's the inspiration that you want to have. That's the lucky thing we have as artists. We can do it as long as we have the capacity to do it.
Yep. No, exactly. I'm in the same boat. I don't have a retirement plan. Just keep drawing and painting as long as I can. Before we get going on this, first of all, I just want to say thank you again for having you on.
Thank you.
It's just I'm just super stoked to talk to you about this stuff. It's really cool. But also, is there anything that you want to promote or mention, direct people towards? You're on Instagram. Just look up CF Payne. You can follow him there. But
yeah, I think my Instagram is C Fox Payne.
So okay, yeah.
Right, my Instagram. I mean, I guess the main thing is where I do the children's books, and those are fun. But I think where I'm putting a lot of my energy right now is really trying to maintain this schooling option for MFAs. I mean, I know that there's a lot of folks who maybe they want to take their work in a new direction, and if they want to, it offers that opportunity. If some people want to be able to utilize their skills to teach and they need to get an MFA, I know there's a lot of adjuncts, they're teaching, but they don't have their MFA, and so therefore, they are being held back by that. And this type of thing really allows, and the great thing about it, the program that I really like is we've got students in our program that may be 25 years old, just a few years out of college, but they've got some real chops. And then we've got other students who have been out for quite a while, and now they've gone so far in their career and they want to be able to do some more teaching, and but they don't have that. So we've got people who are 45, and we've got students that come to us from California. We got them from, we've had students internationally come into the program. And so it's a real blend. It's not a big program. We don't try to make it big. We only want to have about 10, 15 students per class, because I think you get too big, you don't give people the personal time that they need.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, that's awesome. I think that's important.
So it's through the Hartford Art College. So if you just go online, look up low residency MFA in illustration, you should be able to find us, Hartford Art School.
That's awesome.
If anybody ever has any questions, they can email me anytime at cfoxpayne@hartford.edu if they have questions about it. If they have questions about the techniques that I've been doing, posting on Instagram, that's a little bit different than the technique you and I talked about with the oil mixture. They can ask questions on my Instagram account. I try my best to get on that thing and answer questions. I'm still learning it.
That's awesome.
I'm learning this new stuff. It's not easy for me, as you saw with setting up the Skype, but
it's all right.
I'm trying. That's it. I'm doing the best I can. I'm doing the best
awesome.
I can.
Hey, by the way, what is that piece of art behind you? It's like a cow with some weird something.
Oh,
like a rabbit head, or?
Well, I can spin this around. It's a Brault Brault. You know the artist Brault Brault?
I'm not sure.
He's originally from, I believe, the Netherlands. You'd see his work in different publications. He's a brilliant artist.
So awesome.
If I move this around a little bit and turn this up a little bit, you can see there's a Wilson McLean up there.
Oh, that's nice.
I've got, who else do I have behind me? And, over the course of years there, I'll take this off. I'll spin it around for you real quick. Go around, that's a big painting by Philip Burke of my sons.
Oh, that's amazing.
I've got artwork there. I've got artwork up there of Jack Unruh and Skip Lipke and,
nice.
Different folks. I mean, over the years, I've collected artwork. And
that's great. That's awesome.
As a matter of fact, I'm going to show one to you. I'm going to stand up for a second. I'm going to walk over. Since everybody liked the caricature with the baseballs, how about this one here? Can you see that one right there?
Oh, yeah.
That's a Mark English caricature of me with a baseball driven into my head.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really cool, man. That's awesome.
So
okay, cool.
Anywho, that's the studio. This is kind of my studio environment, and so this is where I
That's
work.
nice. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for doing this, and thank your wife for helping out with the phone thing. That's awesome. And again, thank you so much, and we'll have to do this again sometime, man, for sure.
Well, I hope to get up to Chicago sometime, and we got to get ourselves a dog up there in Chicago. How's that? Sound?
That sounds perfect, man. Definitely let me know when you're up here. That'd be awesome.
Okay, man. Thank
All
you.
Right. Cool. All right. We'll talk soon.
Right
You
up.
too.
Bye.